what an honor to stand here today, standing next to two lieutenant colonels, Lieutenant Colonel Ernst, Lieutenant Colonel Sullivan. And by the way, Lieutenant Colonel Ernst was the first woman to ever serve in combat and serve in the United States Senate. And for their service, I am truly grateful. Thank you. And I want to thank Senator Sullivan for really organizing and bringing us together, as well as Senator Ernst. Their leadership as those who have wore or do wear the uniform of the United States military and now serve in the Senate is critical in this most perilous time for our nation as we face threats from all over the world. And to think that this body, the United States Senate, is going to recess tonight for an extended summer recess and leave with the very important unfinished business of funding the U.S. military, funding the troops. Today, the Senate Democrats are expected to once again block the consideration of Defense Appropriation Act of 2017, denying our troops the proper funding and the support they deserve. What kind of message does that send to the men and women who are standing today, putting their lives at risk to protect our country? What message does that send to them? And as Senator Sullivan said, and Senator Ernst, this isn't the first time. It's not the second time. It's not the third time. It's not the fourth time. It is the fifth time we will see our friends across the aisle, the Senate Democrats, filibuster the funding of our troops. This reminds me of Groundhog Day. What's even more frustrating, they are refusing, the Senate Democrats, to even debate the issue. Now, I spent 28 years in the private sector. And I'll tell you, one way to ensure you don't get anything done is to not even discuss it. And that seems to be the road the Senate Democrats are taking. It is the low road, not the high road. They would prefer to once again obstruct what we call regular order in this body, much in the same fashion they did during the past few years, which became the hallmark of a failed Democratic-led Senate majority. And while our troops are actively engaged in multiple theaters across the world, and they need the critical support for our growing mission overseas, my friends from across the aisle are actively blocking our troops from being combat ready. But let's remember, just remember this, a few short weeks ago, the United States House of Representatives, they passed this bill on a solid bipartisan vote, 282 to 138, 48 Democrats supported that bill. It passed with strong bipartisan support. And then over here on the Senate side, I serve in the Appropriations Committee. We passed this bill out of the Appropriations Committee by 30-0. 30-0. That's called a shutout. That's called running up the score. I remember that clearly. Not one Democrat opposed this bill to fund our troops when it passed out of committee. And yet, when it comes to the floor, the Senate Minority Leader now is instructing the Senate Democrats to filibuster, getting the bill even debated here as well as passed on the Senate floor. What's changed? What has changed? Nothing has changed, except for the fact that our troops are not getting the funding and the support they need. Is that what you really want, Mr. Minority Leader? The passage of this legislation is critical to carrying out the missions in an increasingly dangerous world. And I can tell you one thing, our enemies are not waiting for Senate Democrats to fund our troops to make it a fair fight. This bill pays the salaries of 1.2 million military active duty, 800,000 reservists. The Senate Democrats are saying no to almost 10,000 troops engaged right now as we speak in combat in Afghanistan. An additional 5,000 troops in harm's way in Iraq, and many more throughout the globe. I come from Montana. We have one of the highest per capita vet populations in the United States. I'm proud of the Malmstrom Air Force Base, where we have 1/3 of our nation's ICBMs ready at any moment here to defend our freedom. They silently sit across the plains of Montana. But Senate Democrats are failing them. It's unacceptable. And as the Senate heads home for the work period, I challenge my Democrat colleagues to go back home and look at those veterans and those active duty troops in the eye and ask, did I serve these selfless men and women, or did I let the minority leader, the Democrats, play cheap party politics with funding their pay? The minority leader's constituents in Nevada deserve more, Montanans deserve more, the American people deserve more.